what is called culture is what society has come to consume over the years and decades and maybe even centuries. So if we continue to feed information around tolerance for rape, for sexual violence, then society will continue to make excuses for those who engage in this act. I remember I took home from Dr. Mapai when she said that the rapist is the one who should be ashamed. But unfortunately, here in Nigeria, we have created a system wherein the survivor is the one now who has to be ashamed, because the survivor now finds himself or herself being questioned over and over again to the point where the person even begins to feel guilty for a crime that has been committed against that person. So for me as a person, I look forward to more and more of engagements such as this, wherein we are able to establish it as a society that, look, we don't have to create fertile grounds for sexual violence in any shape or form whatsoever. Because if we create that fertile ground for it, then we'll continue to have this issue as a people. So in all of our communications, we have to establish it that, look, we don't tolerate it in any form. Because I have been to several fora where people try to say, oh, certain people make false accusations, other people say the victims encourage it and all of that. We must not accept that. In all of our public communications, we have to establish the fact that sexual violence is not acceptable in any form, or there is no reason for it whatsoever. It is not even a resort, not even to talk about it being a last resort. It's not a resort under any circumstance. So we must, in our communications, establish this. We must put it back into the consciousness of society that this is unacceptable, because we have a patriarchal culture, but that itself is not even an excuse for people to say, oh, I want to dominate this other sex, or some other sex to feel that I am being dominated. So in revenge, I should now try to dominate the other sex. No, we must establish this. So it boils down to the way and manner we talk about these things as a people. We must begin to talk about it in the right light, because that is the only way that we'll establish, we'll be able to upturn this culture that has been established over centuries and be able to establish the right mindset towards this. Because if we're going to tackle it, it has to begin from the mind. We must create safe spaces for victims to be able to express themselves, and even perpetrators themselves. We must also try to understand their mindset, because there is a mental health angle to it as well. Because no normal person would engage in some of the acts that we have seen around sexual violence and all of that, you know, incest, the pedophiles and stuff like that. So we also have to look at the mental health aspect as well. We must look at that and also try to see how we can address that, so that we reduce the perpetrators, as well as creating safe spaces for the victims to express themselves, because that is the biggest challenge. People who have been victims, they don't feel safe being able to express themselves, because by the time a situation where you are trying to explain yourself turns into an interrogation, then the person is discouraged. And most times, even the perpetrators to use threats of violence, threats of shaming, threats of disgrace and all of that to prevent them from speaking out. But if they know, and in all of our public communications, we have established the fact that, look, there are places where you can go and lay your complaints, and there are people who will listen to you, and there are systems in place that can help you pull through this situation, then we'll be able to deal with this issue. So from a communications perspective, I believe that we need to change the way we talk about rape. We need to change the way we talk about sexual violence. We need to establish systems and cultural understanding of the fact that if somebody has suffered violence, the person should be able to express himself or herself freely. So I thank the organizers. It's been a pleasure, and I will still look forward to continuing.
Thank you very much, Basah, Basah Mohammed. Really very interesting how your point of view surrounded around sexual violence. And from the last question I was about to ask you, I think you actually answered that question, but I will still put this out again to the viewers and some of the panelists again. There's a belief that failure of justice system in prosecuting perpetrators is as a result of the societal's indifference to rape and sexual violence. Most of the sexual violence incidents goes unreported because of the victims' shaming and judgment. What's your take on that?
Yes, definitely it is a very, very strong factor, because if society, there is this thing, you know, there's a sense of learned helplessness that we have come to inherit, you know, but at least I'm happy that today in our society we are beginning to talk about these things. But when we were younger, that was not the case. You know, there's this sense of learned helplessness that we had inherited, to the point that even law enforcement agents do not even they do not even see it as a serious issue. You know, you have situations where a policeman is asking, why did you go to his house alone? Look at the way you are dressed. How do you know that he raped you? Did you not enjoy it? And stuff like that. So it's until society comes to the point where we say, look, this is unacceptable, that is when the prosecution will be more effective and there will be a more speedy dispensation of justice around it. Because if society sees it as a normal thing, there is no way. Law enforcement is a product of the society. So law enforcement cannot rise above what the society has come to accept. If society says, no, this is unacceptable, then definitely law enforcement too will be forced to rise to that level of thinking in the society. But if the society sees it as a normal thing, then we'll just keep going around in circles.